I have in front of me a cassette tape of a copy of a programme from the days when Keyview was better known as Sounds Organised. It's actually dated the 15th of December 1982. Now, it has to be said that I don't keep every single edition. That would probably mean in excess of 1,000 tapes. But I did put this one in the archives because at the time, the guest on that show was the very first professional organist that I chatted with. Listening again, as I have recently, it was clear that all the telltale signs of a newcomer to broadcasting were present, and I dread to think what that person thought of the interview attempt backstage at the Upper Mill Civic Hall. Remember that this was an era when many organists were big stars in their own right, and though some have since left us for whatever reason, many still continue to command respect from listeners. My guest then, as now, fits squarely into that category as I welcome back to the programme Harry Stoneham.
Ian, it's lovely to be here again. What is it, 20 years?
Oh, don't say that.
That's not bad.
Harry, the reaction to your music here at the Fly Organ Society tonight is on a par with, if not greater than, the applause a couple of decades ago in that modest village hall in Saddleworth. How do you account for that fact, given that the music trends in general tend to change almost weekly?
Well, I don't think really that my approach to it has changed really all that amount. I still consider myself, people look at me as a bit of a jazz player, but I purely look at myself as a middle-of-the-road player. I like good songs, any good songs from any era, whether it's the Cole Porters, the Jerome Kerns, the Sammy Kahn things, or whether we come right up through the pop era, whatever. I just like good material and do it the way I feel that I would like to play it. I don't always play the song exactly the way it was originally recorded. I just do it the way I feel, and it just so it happens that people seem to enjoy it. Well, some people do. So from that point of view, I'm lucky.
We do try to take on board our listeners' comments about musical content on the programme, Harry, and in reply to a recent questionnaire, and it's funny you mentioned this in your opening comments there, one respondent was actually quite vociferous about not liking jazz music. I have to say, he named you specifically on the sheet, which was returned to me. Now, obviously, I know that there are many musical facets, as you've just said, in your playing, but once the idea of being nothing else but a jazzer gets into the minds of the public, does it frustrate you or annoy you?
No, not at all, really. I mean, it's just one of those things. What can one do about it? I do a certain amount of what I call swing music. I tend to play that way during the course of what I play. But on the other hand, I do play ballads without any of those influences whatsoever. But whatever people feel about my playing, I can't do anything about it. I mean, there are some people come to hear me because I do play that way. Other people don't like it. But then again, it wouldn't do if we all liked the same thing, really, would it? But the thing is, I think it's pointless criticising somebody because they do a certain thing. I mean, because there are certain things I don't like, but I wouldn't criticise them. I mean, I love Tchaikovsky, for example. Let's talk about some classical music. I love Tchaikovsky because I love lovely melodies, and I don't think there was any composer that has written nicer melodies, beautiful things. Now, I don't like Wagner because it's just the opposite of that. But I can't turn around and say, I'm sorry, Wagner, I mean, why was he born or whatever, why did he write all of this? Because obviously there is something there for an awful lot of other people.
Sure.
So, and that's it. There are people that can only just see one type of particular kind of music that they like and can't see anything beyond that. I mean, I try to think that I can see a much broader thing in music. I mean, my life in music hasn't been devoted to the organ anyway. I mean, I'm a professional musician and have been for many, many years, and I'm not saying how many, because God...
Perhaps more than 20.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, my work, and the majority of my work, was in recordings, originally was with big bands, and that's the way I was brought up. I mean, and I got this influence from my father many years ago when I was a child, and I went into big bands when I was first-term professional musician, and then I went through that, and then I went on from there. There was a number of people who thought I was reasonably good, so I got called to do some recording sessions with other people. And before I knew where I was now working freelance as a session musician purely in London in recording sessions all the time. The organ thing was just a bit of an offshoot of this because I used to love to play live. I always thought that it was a bit false being in a recording studio all the time, because you could be sitting in there from three-hour sessions a day, from 10 to 1, 2 to 5, 7 to 10. And you could lose sight of what an audience was like. So I always made a point, once a week, always to play live, whether it be with the duo or whether it be with the trio. Because there was no rhythms on the organs in those days. And that was purely to keep in touch with the people, and to get, to feed off people, an audience. But the organ side of it was just a small side of it, really. So I've got much wider views in music. I mean, I've recorded with different MDs, musical directors, in films, and I've played all types of music, so I'm open to all types myself. There you go.
Harry, when we spoke last, the organ world was big business, with brand, I suppose, after brand, selling products, as one specialist put it to me some years ago, like shelling peas. When the recession, assuming that there was a recession, rot set in, did that affect, with your sort of organ hat on, did that affect you as a performer on those different brands?
I don't think the organ business went down because of a recession. I think everybody was, dealer-wise, was jumping on the bandwagon because they were selling so quickly. I don't think they were very careful the way they sold to people. I mean, I don't think that they went into the needs of a particular person, what they wanted to play when they sold an instrument. They would be only too pleased. I mean, as far as they was concerned, somebody bought the instrument, good luck, cheerio, and that's all they wanted to know about them. Whereas I think if they had spent a bit more care at that time, making sure the person had the right instrument, had the right backup, and there was enough people about with the technical know-how to show them different things about it, I think there wouldn't have been. I think there was an awful lot of people with disillusion at that time that bought instruments, and also if they wanted to trade up, I think, and this was another thing, they were changing models so rapidly. As fast as somebody bought an instrument, I mean, you were sort of saying to them, well, look, yes, this is a current model, and they would buy this instrument in all good faith, and in all good faith from my point of view. And you would find that in another month, this instrument had been completely replaced by something else. And that would only last for a year, most. I mean, they were changing so rapidly. And I think people lost faith in it. And I think all of a sudden, it became very, very hard to sell instruments. And I don't think the technical know-how with a lot of dealers was there. And of course, now we've got to a situation, of course, is that there is so much now is available to people on a single keyboard. And I think that people don't want a big lump of stuff in their sitting room, necessarily. I don't know what the answer to it is, but no, it didn't affect my career at all, because really and truly speaking, I was, throughout that time, you see, I was still doing television all the time. I was still doing recording work. So, no, it didn't really affect me from a professional music standpoint, no, an income.
Obviously, Harry, we've heard your music throughout this little conversation here today. We've not heard a lot of new recordings from Mr. Stoneham. Why is that?
Well, as I'm not tied into any record company anymore, no artists are. I come to that middle of the road, artists are tied into record companies. It's all down to me now. I've had, this particular year, I've had 4 people that wanted me to record albums. And I really don't know what I'd like to record. You see, I've recorded a lot of albums, and there's nothing that I feel that I want to do. See, certain people say to me, they listen to me play sort of some big band numbers, because the way instruments are now, you can do big band numbers, you can do orchestral numbers. They say, you ought to do an album of big band numbers. And I think, yeah, first of all, I get infused and I think, no, it's going to be really boring, this. I mean, maybe a couple of big band numbers. So now you start thinking about, should an album be themed? I.e., should this have a theme, this album? Not necessarily. And in the end, I think to myself, oh, what the hell? I don't really want to record anything. So there you go.
You've worked with an impressive cast list of producers anyway, haven't you, Harry? I know that there's...
Recording-wise?
Recording-wise, yes. That one gentleman familiar to listeners to this programme, perhaps for his work with Phil Kelsall over at the Tower Ballroom.
Barrett.
Barrett, yeah.
At Grassmere Records. Yeah, well, because I worked with Bob. He was the one that tied me to EMI, signed me to contract. So I recorded. See, this is going back to why I don't record, because in those days I had to record 2 albums a year, and Bob was there to say, Harry, it's time to record the next album. There's the material, take it away. So I didn't have any excuse about what I was going to record. There it was, get on with it and do it. So I had to do it. I mean, which was probably very good for me, the discipline. But yes, I worked for Bob through many years. In fact, my last album was for Bob, for Grassmere, and that gentleman out there who hated jazz music would definitely hate this record, because Bob wanted a jazz record, and it was live at Abbey Road, in the old Beatles studio with an audience. But that was the last one in '92. And incidentally, for your listeners to know, I would like them to know that Bob Barrett has been really, really ill this last year. So perhaps all those people out there could say some private get-wells for him.
Harry, one last point, which is on my list of things to draw to your attention, and it's the word retirement. Is it in the vocabulary?
It could be from the point of view of playing live. I don't know. I tell you what I find very, very difficult now about doing concerts like tonight. The one thing I do find a little bit difficult is the travelling, because roads are getting so bad. But I still love playing. Listen, I started playing piano. I listened to my mum playing when I was about 6. And she taught me to play the piano by tonic solfa, because she could only play by ear. So I first learnt tonic solfa. And then Dad said, look, I obviously really wanted to play. So when I was about 6.5, I went off to music lessons. I've been playing music and listening to music, because my father was a music enthusiast. Since that time, I don't know what it would be like not to play music. And if I didn't play, so if you talked about a physical retirement, if you actually talked about that and said that I didn't even go around playing anymore live, which I can't see that happening in the foreseeable future, But if it did happen, I still wouldn't pack it in because I would still be playing. Because I love playing music. I still get when I sit down at home, and I still get a great thrill out of music. I still think it's the most wonderful thing. And if there's any people out there that don't play, they really ought to get out there and play. It doesn't matter how good, how bad, because it is still one of the most wonderful things in life. For me, the most wonderful thing in life.
Harry, 2 decades seem to have flown by as far as I'm concerned. I suspect the same may well be true of you, and it's been a real treat and a real pleasure to meet up again.
It's gone quicker for me than you, I tell you.
I hope we can do this again.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Another 20 years.
See you in 2022 or whatever that. Harry Stoneham, many thanks indeed.
Ian, thank you very much indeed.